All right, folks, welcome in. Welcome to the Future of Film Showcases Industry Panel, presented by CBC GEM and in partnership with Fay Pictures and the Canadian Media Producers Association. Today, we are here for the future of equity in film, where we will talk about the real stuff that impacts our lives: disability, race, gender, sexuality, and more, with industry leaders like myself and the FOFS team are keen from hearing from. My name is Samah Ali, and I am this year's FOFS Industry Director and founder of Sisterhood Media, a distribution and production organization platforming films for and by marginalized folks. Of course, we have our streaming service, Sisterhood Media TV, and you folks can check that out on in your own time. However, I have the pleasure of leading the conversation today. And after gathering these accomplished folks, we are going to get that discussion started in just a little bit. However, before we do, I would like to take a time to recognize this land on behalf of the Future of Film Showcase. Because this is an online event, we understand that the land acknowledgement may differ from some of our viewers watching from various parts of Canada and perhaps the world. However, we would like to acknowledge the many Indigenous nations that have long-standing traditions with the territories upon which the Future of Film Showcase operates. We acknowledge our presence on the traditional territory of the many Indigenous nations. The area known as Takaranto has been taken care by the Anishinaabeg Nation, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, the Huron-Wendat, and the Métis. It is now home to many Indigenous peoples, such as the current treaty holders, the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. This territory is subject to the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Belt Covenant, an agreement to share and care for the Great Lakes region. On behalf of FOFS and myself, it is an absolute honor to have you here today, and we are ready to take part of this meaningful discussion. To orient us into the panel, as folks populate in, let's break down what this event is going to look like. Naturally, we are here for the Future of Film Showcase, a festival that looks towards the future of the industry by featuring films from filmmakers under the age of 40. While the festival is currently available to watch on CBC GEM, and there are 2 days left, so you are all welcome to check that out after the festival for free. This panel will be available on YouTube in just a few days. So for our lovely attendees, at the end of our panel, we will have an interactive conversation with you. First, we will start with a few case studies from our filmmakers discussing their current experiences making films, and then we'll get into a conversation with our panelists who are keen and ready to talk, and then we will end off with an open floor where you are all welcome to ask questions, of course, in that question box, or raise your hand to take the mic. And remember, that's going to be at the end. So if you're ready and you have a thought halfway through, write it down and then take the mic later, okay? For deaf and hard of hearing attendees, as I mentioned earlier, please keep your eyes on our diligent interpreter, Carmel, for live translations. So, I mean, this is an event during COVID. So we ask you to be patient with us. If there are any technical difficulties, lost connections, or any other bugs, c'est la vie during a pandemic. We'll roll with the punches and keep the show going no matter what. I also believe it would be naive of us, especially during an event about equity, to ignore the shortcomings that we have with this panel and its structure. I want to be conscious of particular lived experiences that we do not have a voice for on this panel. Having a discussion on equity is vital, and I do not want us to avoid or miss conversations just because somebody is not represented on our proverbial stage. With this in mind, I would love for you all to stay until the end so you can share your experiences during our town hall portion. I personally will prioritize your thoughts and questions for those as we get closer to the end for the topics that we ended up missing today in our equitable discussion. Finally, for those on the socials, please interact with us online. We're using the hashtag FOFS Industry, FOFS Industry, and tag us at Future Film Show on both Instagram and Twitter. Or, if you want to talk to me, you can tag me at Sister Samah. Spelled the way my name is spelled right in front of you, Samah. And guess what? I only use Twitter because that's my favorite platform. I believe that is it for our opening messages. And now, without taking any more time, I want to toss it to the brilliant people we have on your screen today. I will ask each panelist to introduce themselves, say a little bit about who they are, what they do, and then we'll get to the case studies. Stephen, I will throw it to you, and then we'll go from there.
Okay. Hello, everybody. My name is Stephen Tebow, and I am the COO of Braun Media Corp, a Canadian company originating in Vancouver, and but now international in a lot of different ways. And so my role is to oversee the parent of companies at the operational level, but I also have a strong focus on production, finance, and physical production. So I work with an amazing team of people, and we all bind together to make sure that all of the productions that Braun is involved in go smoothly and are completed and delivered. So that is sort of my focus in that niche side of things. And I'm glad to be here.
I'm glad you're here too. What an honor. Sarab, let's go to you.
Hi there, everyone. My name is Sarab Merchant. I am a literary agent at the Characters Talent Agency. We are a multi-purpose agency. We represent actors, writers, directors, and key below-the-line talent in Canada and around the world. I'm based in Toronto, and I represent writers, directors, and key creatives below the line, DOPs, editors, production designers, that sort of thing.
Love that. We're going to get deeper into that. Love that. Lulu, who are you?
Hi, my name is Lulu Wei. Thanks for having me. Very excited to be on this panel. I'm a director and cinematographer based in Toronto, and I had my first feature, There's No Place Like This Place Anyplace, premiere at Hot Docs this year.
Perfect. Thank you for being here, Lulu, especially with a booked and busy schedule on the festival circuit.
Thanks for having me.
Jesse?
Hi, my name is Jesse Brosset. Really excited to be here. Thanks for having me. I work with the Canadian Filmmakers Distribution Center. It's CFMDC for short. It's a independent, non-commercial, not-for-profit distributor. It's been around since 1967, specializing in independent media art, documentaries, experimental work, etc. And my role there is distribution and collections coordinator. So if people want to rent, purchase, license any of the films in our collection, they get in touch with me, and I oversee all of our festival distribution and our educational outreach. Yeah, thanks so much.
Thanks. And last but certainly not least, Maya.
Hello, everyone. My name is Maya Bedward, and I am a filmmaker based and I used to work for a funder, so I have a lot of experience also grant writing as well. And I am one of the members of the ad hoc group for the Black Screen Office, which was just established, we're in the process of establishing this year. And I'll probably talk more about that as well.
Mm-hmm. Perfect. Naturally, Maya, unfortunately, there is the COVID bug with your Wi-Fi. So hopefully we'll actually get that fixed while we throw to the case studies right now. Right now, we're going to watch a few films from our filmmakers where they're going to talk about their obstacles in the industry thus far and what equity means to them.
Hi, my name is Rebecca Love. I co-directed Ripe with Connor Casey, and I live with 2 diseases. So when it comes to obstacles that I have faced when coming into contact with the film industry here in Toronto, I would say they all revolve around my health. It's really challenging to work on films when your health is not great. The way I see it, filmmaking is a physical act. It requires physical strength and it requires mental strength. And when you don't have both of those things, it's really hard to make a movie. I'm lucky to work with a team that acknowledges my limitations, and I have been lucky enough to be directing my own projects so I can choose my own schedule, and I often will shoot in only one location and only one day of shooting, maybe 2 days of shooting, and that takes a lot out of me. But it's still very challenging to engage in the art form when your body doesn't always work very well, sort of unpredictable. When it comes to questions of equity and what I think equity will hopefully look like in the future, I think a situation where everybody's needs are met and those who have traditionally felt excluded from the world of filmmaking are not only included, but can take on positions of leadership and can have their voices heard.
Hi, my name is Wang Weibing, and my film is called 我的理想家园, My Ideal Family. So the first question, I have not faced any obstacles because I'm still at a stage where I make films with very limited resources. So I'm, I guess, a very amateur, in a very amateur way. So working in that way gives me more room to just have fun and experiment. And the second question, I think equality in film firstly means that we are actively trying to work with identity politics and trying to work out those individual differences across communities instead of just working within our own. And secondly, I think equality in film means that we as filmmakers have an awareness of the power relations between us as the filmmakers and the people in our films. And I think that is very important. I think that's pretty much it. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much to Rebecca Love and Wang Wenbin for sharing their stories today. We really appreciate their participation in the panel, and Rebecca brings up a really pertinent topic that I first want to discuss with everyone. The importance of our bodies being included in the conversation of equity in film. So, to start off our discussion, I want to tap all the producers, Lulu, Stephen, and Maya. Would love to get your thoughts on my first question. When setting up your productions, do you consider your team's abilities, and how do you set up those accommodations? So let's start with Lulu. What do you think?
I'm mostly like a director DP. I did start out producing my own film at the very beginning before I got a producer, but I think it's obviously important to consider where everybody is coming from and try to be able to accommodate everybody on set. And I think that I specifically when I look to crew up and looking for like BIPOC folks and like queer folks and like also like non-binary folks to be a part of the crew, etc.
I love that you prioritize that. And, you know, first and foremost, I definitely identify the crews that I've worked on. It's typically all Black and brown folks just on set doing everything. And when folks say that, you know, we don't exist or we can't find them, like, are you looking? Do you know where to look? And who are you speaking with? So I appreciate you mentioning that, Lulu. Stephen, what about you? How do you consider folks' abilities when you're setting up productions?
I mean, I think that we always make sure to choose the best people that are suited to whatever task we're looking for and, of course, available. And we're always consciously aware of gender and diversity. I would say that someone's resume is not directly related to their to whether or not they have the longer the resume that they have, it does not necessarily equate to being the best person for the job. So always being very aware of what you're looking for and how you can include people and different first voices and different cultures into our productions has been our mandate from the start, being a company that was formed by Brenda Gilbert and Aaron Gilbert. Mm-hmm. Brenda being the BR and then Aaron being the ON, mm-hmm. And Brenda being from a Fijian national, like her family is Fijian. So we've always had that real focus of inclusive voices and diversification and gender parity. That's really something that we did from the start 10 years ago. So that's our focus.
Mm-hmm. That's obviously really important. I know Maya, I think her connection probably dropped off, so we'll hold off on getting her answer in just a bit. But I definitely want to continue with you two, Lulu and Stephen. Obviously, the idea of calling sick and taking a day off was not taken very seriously before the pandemic, and clearly we needed a health pandemic that was worldwide to value people's needs. I want to know, what are some approaches you folks are using for perhaps your upcoming projects and productions that now, you know, consider people's bodies' health and well-being as an utmost priority?
I mean, I don't have any projects coming up that I'm signed on to direct, or I have a few things I'm trying to develop, but I have been shooting a lot for other productions. And I think I like how obviously now it's really important to consider people's health, especially being a very physical industry. It's like you're always afraid you're gonna injure yourself and then you won't be able to work, because it's like, what's gonna happen if you can't, you know, if I can't shoot, then I can't make a living, kind of thing. And I think, I guess from a being on crew perspective, it is hard when you're hired as crew to feel like this sense of like, if you're uncomfortable with a situation because maybe you don't feel safe, like COVID wise, like to say something, or to see maybe other people who are like higher up in the production not following certain guidelines, and to have to say something, it just I guess that feels uncomfortable. And I think that's all something that producers and like directors also need to make sure that they're following and practicing, kind of thing. But I think it's great that people are considering like mental health and like physical health a lot more these days, and having shorter days too.
I love the shorter day element of that. I think everyone's like, yes, shorter days. Stephen, I'll throw to you.
I totally agree with you, Lulu. I mean, I think with the current situation in the world, everyone's having to relook at what production looks like. And I know I've been in negotiations with the guilds from the CMPA perspective, where we've had extensive conversations about the need for to have a mindset around health and rest, especially rest, like turnaround from one production day to the next being too short often, and just pushing crew, right? So now we've really built in to our structures quite a bit of resources for our crew and our cast and everyone, in order to allow us to be successful at what we're all trying to do together, which is to make a film, and to be able to do that in a way that addresses our health and our safety, which are extremely important right now, especially as we deal with COVID. So our productions, we have 8 productions right now that we're active in throughout the world, and it's both scary and exciting, at the same time. The risks are all there. We all share the same risks. It's one of the great equalizers of our age, this COVID. Our teams are really focused on making sure that health and safety are in the forefront. And so it does mean some shorter hours, allowing more time for testing, allowing more time for people to check in with their bodies to make sure that they're feeling okay before they show up to set. And if they aren't, then we have the support structure in place to help them through that part of any kind of issues that may come from that. And it's not funny, that it should take a world pandemic to bring us all back into focus about what's really important, which is, why are we doing this? It's to tell stories that are important to our communities and to each other, and it's not to kill ourselves to make that movie for that extra dollar profit. It's really for the idea of making sure that we're able to communicate to each other, with each other, and about each other, these really important messages. And if we are so focused on just getting it done and not taking into consideration our health or our community's health, we've got a very big problem. So I completely agree with you, Lulu. I think it's really important to focus on that.
What are some of the resources that you folks have put into place, as you mentioned earlier?
Well, luckily we haven't had to use them yet, but obviously it is allowing for a shorter shoot day, but so that there is more time on either side to process people through and to check in with themselves. Like I said earlier, there's the COVID quarantine period that everyone needs to go through, and we're taking all of this very seriously, obviously. Not just because it's legislated, but because we want to make sure that everyone that comes together to make this project is really safe. Because we're very keenly aware that one person getting COVID on a set could explode into multiple people, and then we're affecting people's families. And so if we're being entrusted with people as they come to work with us in these teams. And so our focus is really about that kind of structure. We have medical on hand, and it's enhanced medical. So it used to be that we would just have, first aid crafty. And now we're moved into having medical professionals and people that are actually helping with the specialized nurses that understand how to take the tests on behalf of the crew and the cast. So there's just all sorts of new members of our teams that are coming on board that we haven't had to have before, but that are now essential as part of our process. So.
Thank you for taking the time to explain that. I really appreciate that, Stephen. And Maya, there was a storm and now you're back. Welcome. I actually just asked a question meant for the producers, so I would love for you to chime in how you're actually, when you're setting up productions, how you're considering different people's abilities when they come to set, and how are you making accommodations for that?
Yes, definitely. Well, I guess if there's an accommodation request, or we're aware that there could be, I think we just are in constant communication with the team member that we're working with to make sure that we are providing the appropriate accommodation. We always try, like our productions are pretty small in terms of teams because I mostly work in documentary. So when we're putting the budget together from the get-go, we already know who we'll be working with for the most part. So when we know there might be a required accommodation, we definitely speak with that person and then put in the appropriate costs that might be needed to support that accommodation as well in the budget. So we're thinking about that even before pre-production when we're still in development, so that we can ensure that we have all the supports required to provide the accommodation. And then we're just throughout the production in communication to make sure that if there's any additional accommodation or requirements or needs, we're always available. And Kate Fraser, my co-producer, manages a lot of that while I'm directing on set, and is always proactive, I would say, when it comes to ensuring that we're there and supporting people's needs.
That's lovely. And as you mentioned, it's vital. So Rob, I want to get you into the conversation because you mentioned that you obviously the characters represent multiple different roles of talent. How do you actually handle folks who are coming from different disabled communities? And when you're feeding them, obviously, to these lovely productions, what are things that you have to keep in mind? And then also, specific things that are on file that everyone should know.
Yeah, I thought it was really, really interesting what I believe Rebecca was her name, right? How she was saying like she has chronic health issues that require certain kinds of accommodations. And I think from an agent's perspective, what's really important is knowing exactly what that individual's can do, in terms of physically, mentally, what exactly, okay, I cannot work a 15-hour day. I can't, I'm not able to do this, or I'm not. And so having that information at hand really helps us from the beginning when we're, initiating conversations with producers, about, okay, this is what we will require. These are the kind of concessions we'd like to make. I've had clients, who have been engaged on projects, and it was a project that would require them to, be sitting for a long period of time. And my client came to me and said, listen, I've been having back and hip issues. I'm not able to do that. Do you think production would be able to get me a standing desk? And that became a conversation point, and as an agent, that's part of what our job is, in addition to kind of, negotiating all the other typical deal points and arguing with Steven about, no, I need more money, no, I don't, all that fun stuff that, agents and producers do. Part of it is also understanding what our clients' needs are in a very specific way and being able to say, okay, here's what we can do. And also understanding that potentially there's some jobs that aren't a good fit. And and if those ones aren't, let's find the ones that are, or figure out a way to get the person doing something that works within their abilities and is also fulfilling at the same time, right? And I think that's where the challenge is. And I have to confess that because I've never experienced that directly in a kind of a chronic sort of way, as Rebecca describes, it requires a new set of thinking that that I would want to think more about and kind of figure out. And it comes down to what are the abilities, what are the limitations there, what can you or can't do, can you not do, so we can figure out how to help you the best way possible.
Thank you for that. Folks, I have so many questions, but I have to be succinct because I definitely want to leave time for the town hall. So Jesse, I'm going to move on to you. Obviously, you are the acquisitions, collections, and bookings lead at CFMDC. And I'm curious, when you're gathering assets from filmmakers, what are the required files that you need? And perhaps do filmmakers ever think about, subtitle tracks, if it's an English film specifically, and then film accompaniment for partially or completely visually impaired folks, so described video?
Yeah, so I guess the main thing we get from everyone is a digital video file and some accompanying materials like clips and trailers and film stills, posters, headshots for the filmmaker and that sort of thing. And yeah, and so that's kind of all the stuff that we need for like basic festival distribution. That's kind of the stuff that everyone asks for, expects. And we also do ask for caption files or subtitles or even a transcript in some cases. Obviously we love when a filmmaker has those files prepared and is able to provide those when they submit a new film to us. But at the moment, it's not exactly a requirement. It's a bit of a balancing act, I guess. Captioning and translation and subtitling can be pretty time-consuming processes for filmmakers to do on their own, and it can be an expensive process for them to outsource. So, those aren't always resources that independent filmmakers have available to them. Like, not everyone is a full-time filmmaker. A lot of them are working full-time jobs and doing stuff on weekends, and don't always have funding. Wei-Van was saying about kind of being amateurish or being able to play around with it. A lot of the filmmakers in our collection, I think, would be in that kind of same camp. So they don't always have like funding available. They're just kind of making things on their own. So when it comes to things like captioning and subtitles, we recognize that not everyone's going to be able to provide us those materials. At the same time, we know that making captioning available is a really important step toward making films more accessible.
Definitely.
Both in the educational sector, if you go to or in a library context, if you go and like just borrow a film or watch it in a classroom, having captioning available, and also in the festival environment and cinemas. For universities right now, this is a conversation we've been having kind of a lot lately. For universities in Ontario right now, there's a big push to caption videos in libraries because of the Accessibility for Ontarians with Disabilities Act is really kind of mandating that teaching materials are accessible in ways that they weren't previously required to be. And I've also been hearing from a lot of more festivals that they require captions or subtitles, which in many cases, or maybe not many cases, but in a lot of cases, they're fortunate enough to have factored that into their budget and are able to prepare those files themselves or outsource the creation of those files. But in some cases that isn't possible and the burden still falls on the filmmaker. So, just kind of recognizing the limitations that some filmmakers are dealing with. It's not exactly a requirement, but we really love it when we can get those files.
I agree.
Yeah, and we actually purchased captioning software last year, kind of recognizing how important it is and how difficult it can be for filmmakers. So that's something that we can actually do in-house. But there's a new problem, which is that we're a very small team. Our tech department is literally one person. It just wouldn't be possible for him to caption. I mean, it would be an insurmountable task to caption our entire collection. We have something around, we represent over 1,200 filmmakers, and I think we've reached 4,000 titles. We've been around for 53 years, so we have quite a lot in the collection. But it would even still be a hard task to caption new work as it came into the collection. Like, it would really just take up so much of his day, and he would become a full-time captioner. So it's still a very time-consuming task, even though we have the resources in-house. So the way that we've kind of tried to make that a little bit more accessible for filmmakers, a little bit more affordable and a little bit more realistic for them to do that, is to just offer those captioning services at below market rate, and kind of make sure that if a festival gets in touch with us and wants to show a film and needs captions, and the filmmaker just can't make them on their own, or that they just can't afford a commercial service, that we're at least able to help them along in that and make it a little bit more realistic.
Affordable.
Yeah.
So it's definitely something that needs to be factored into someone's budget, and definitely a note to producers who are making their films and exporting it, to have those files at the ready, so that way that distributors like you, Jesse, don't have so much on your plate and having to go the extra mile to overexpend folks. I definitely think it's something that we can do. How everyone filmmaker says, do it in post. Maybe this is something that we do it in post so that we don't have to do it in distribution. I see this. Exactly. I want to switch gears a little. Maya, I want to get you into the discussion. There was a huge development last week, and I was super excited to see not only it happening, but also your name. First and foremost, for those who don't know, there is officially going to become a Black Screen Office opening up in Canada. And while I know you are a producer in your own respect, Maya, I would love to know more about this burgeoning organization, how it started, how it came to be. Just tell me everything about Black Screen Office.
Yeah, very quickly. I mean, I personally was approached by Jennifer Holness, who is a producer at Hungry Eyes Media, and she was working with a group of producers, senior producers who, have been in the industry for 20 years and more, and have seen time and time again the same systemic barriers that have prevented Black filmmakers from getting films made, Black filmmakers from getting opportunities working in production companies, from above the line to below the line, opportunities for Black creators. And they're just very frustrated with the moment that we found ourselves in this summer. It was a very emotional time for us. It was time for change. It was time for change. And so inspired by some of the incredible work that we've seen done through the Indigenous Screen Office, this ad hoc group came together and started thinking about ways we could change the systemic structures that keep Black filmmakers, Black creators from making their work and making sure that it's being seen, and that audiences and Black audiences are being also recognized in Canada. So we put together a letter, and we invited over 100 Black creators in Canada from coast to coast to sign on, and we got an overwhelming amount of support. And we took this letter to the Minister of Heritage, and we had a meeting with him, and he was keen to learn more. And from that, we continued to speak with a lot of the gatekeepers in the industry, including Telefilm, CMF, CBC, and we had a lot of meetings with the high-level decision makers, basically people who run the show, about what they could do to change the playing field in the industry. And last week, our meeting with Telefilm went incredibly well, and they signed on to supporting us and giving us $100,000 annually to begin our work at the Black Screen Office and to continue it. And we'll have a few other announcements soon as well. We're also reaching out to the private funding community to get support as well. And we're partnering with organizations that are already in existence, like REMC and BIPOC TV, real world, to make sure that we are supporting each other in our endeavors. So yeah, it's a very exciting time. And, you know, I was looking at the roster at TIFF, and to see so many Black filmmakers have their short films and feature films playing, Canadian Black filmmakers. I don't think there's been ever a time where I've seen these many filmmakers have their films play at TIFF all at once. So it's exciting. It's like there's a real movement happening right now, and hopefully the Black Screen Office is here to sustain it.
I 100% agree. And when I saw the Black Screen Office last week, I was like, oh my goodness, like partner organization to Indigenous Screen Office, like this is brilliant. This is so needed. And it was amazing that I could get you on this panel. It was essential for us to have someone speak to this. And, you know, I want to, you know, we have a few minutes left before we actually get into the open conversation with folks. So I actually want to speak with Lulu, somebody who did get funding from all the big ones in Canada. Please tell us about your filmmaking experience, especially where it comes to your big doc that is currently on the festival circuit.
Yeah, I guess it was really exciting because this was my first feature, and it was a huge learning process for me. I sort of, because I'm a shooter by trade, I just started picking up my camera and filming what was happening around me with the redevelopment of Honest Eds. And I didn't expect to receive funding and wasn't really sure what the proper development process and the production process was going to be. But then I went and did the Real World E20 Talent Lab, and I actually hadn't thought about applying for the Telefilm Talent to Watch, because I was like, it's a lot of money, and this is a small documentary and they're probably not going to fund, you know, a documentary, this film, especially because I'm a newer filmmaker. But someone who was another E20 participant was just like, what's the harm in actually just applying? So then I did, and then I actually ended up getting Talent to Watch, which was really awesome. And after that, it sort of just, I feel picked up and snowballed a bit in that I ended up applying for Hot Docs Cross Currents Canada Doc Fund, and I received production funding from that, which was amazing. And then I had to apply twice, and on the second time I got Toronto Arts Council, not on the first one.
Look at that.
So
relatable content.
So I mean, really with my project, I really just kind of did not think it was going to happen, in that I couldn't find a producer who was interested. And then my friend Allie, who ended up producing it, hopped on, and I was really like, I have zero money and nothing. And she was really happy to help. And then, you know, we even talked to some other production companies to try and figure out, because she's a new producer, if they could mentor us or executive produce. And I think, you know, even with that, it was difficult to find something that would work before we got funding. But I feel after we got funding, everything sort of happened. And then we were lucky in that the CBC ended up commissioning a 1-hour POV version for the POV strand. And so I think that this was a small project that I really thought I would just make regardless, because I'm super passionate about telling the story. And somehow I think amazingly people believed in the project and believed in me as a first feature director, and we got the funding. And now it's sad to have to premiere it in the pandemic, but we're just trying to figure out how to still do a festival run and the best way to get it out into the world.
I think you've done an excellent job. Especially, I thought it was very poignant premiering at Hot Docs when that was just around the corner from where you used to live, and Honest Eds as well. I remember I was walking down the street on Bathurst, and one day Honest Ed was there and the next day it wasn't. And I'm sure you probably went through so much from the moment you heard about the block being sold and you thought, let me pick up the camera. I actually, just want to push a little bit more because it's such a relatable experience about applying for funds or grants that, don't ultimately turn up, or you have to apply multiple times. Can you talk to me about that experience? Was this your first time doing that, or have you done it on some of your other directorial and cinematography work?
I am sort of newer to grant writing. I sort of also come from like the commercial world where, it's like, here's the money to make the thing, you just direct and shoot it, the money's already there kind of thing. So, and I've done a lot of small projects with friends where, and like music videos where you literally put everything into it that you don't make any money, you just put all the money on screen, and a lot of people have to pull favors, and I just expected that this was something I was gonna have to do. And a lot of times, like I find that I think getting into grant writing is hard, and that I myself don't consider myself like a writer per se, and so it is intimidating when you have like really big grants to figure out sort of what to how best to write them. But I think that what really helped us is like we finally were able to get a tiny bit of, I think, money to sort of cut together a development trailer, and with all the footage that I had shot, and that I think really sold people and was good to have in all the subsequent grants that I applied to. But yeah, I feel like my thing that I've learned is that things are competitive, but that you have zero chance of getting it if you don't apply. And I think a lot of times things feel like they're inaccessible, but doing a lot of the talent labs, because I did like Hot Docs, Doc Accelerator, and I did the like the Documentary of Canada organization's breakthrough program, which actually puts you in front of all these different sort of gatekeepers kind of thing. And like the Real World E20, and I did RIDM's Talent Lab with this project where I met Maya at the RIDM Talent Lab. And through all of those things, I feel like it really helped either put me in front of funders and be able to pitch them informally. But I think all of those labs helped me learn how to pitch the film and realize that it could become a bigger project.
And it is. If anybody has not yet seen the film at one of its many premieres, there's no place like this place, any place. Make sure when you do watch it, you remember Lulu, because she's behind the work. Again, as I mentioned earlier, I have so many questions that I would still like to ask, but I want to be very respectful of the space that we want to honor, our town hall. So I do want to open up this floor and get everyone involved. One of the shortcomings of moderating this event, as I mentioned before, we can't cover every single topic. There were even topics today that I have as questions, but we could not cover because of the sake of time. So I encourage everyone to participate for us to get as many elements in the conversation as possible. You are welcome to share your questions in the question box just right below. And if you would like to speak, please just say something in the chat. That way we can have a running list of folks that we can bounce in between. So let's check everything out. All right. So I feel like we have a bunch of, silent Sallys in the room. So there's no issue with that for me. While everyone is still thinking about their questions, oh, I think a few folks are saying they cannot see the question box. There should be a question box right beside the chat function. See if you can have that. No? Okay, Carol, would you like to write your question in the chat? Okay, I see a question from Melody, so we'll get right into there. What programs and opportunities are making you the most excited right now? And this isn't directed to anybody. So I believe this is an open question for everybody to respond to. So Rob, I'll throw to you first, and then we can get it popping from there.
It's a great question. I guess I think the black screen office is probably something that's really, really exciting. I think for a lot of reasons. I think that's really, really compelling. I think some of the initiatives that BIPOC Film and TV are doing, especially working with the Writers Guild of Canada, to kind of allow more entry-level writers to kind of break into the industry in a meaningful way, especially writers from non-traditionally represented communities that we don't see too often in our writing community, I think is really, really exciting. I feel like there's a lot of stuff that's kind of in the development phase, in the kind of ether right now. And as things start to develop, we start to see more, and we'll start to see hopefully how more of these kind of programs and initiatives pan out and develop, and fingers crossed that'll lead to some really exciting and really, really compelling sort of change.
Mm-hmm. Jesse, I'll throw to you.
Yeah, I guess from the perspective of CFMDC from distribution, I think we've during March, April, May, June, with COVID shutting down everything, festivals really came to a standstill, and all these things got canceled or postponed. Mm-hmm. So from our perspective, we've had this great opportunity to find new clients and new ways of getting work out there. We've been working with a lot more streaming sites and making sure that people can still access work, and working with niche platforms that we wouldn't necessarily have had time to correspond with and find out more about and work with. So that's been kind of a nice opportunity for us recently, and just making sure that filmmakers still have their films accessible even when the world is on lockdown. Yeah.
Thanks. Maya?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think what the Indigenous Screen Office is doing is amazing, and the amount of Indigenous content that is coming out, and mm-hmm. this quest for Indigenous sovereignty around storytelling is really compelling, and I'm very inspired by the work that they're doing. And yeah, I'm excited to watch Trickster, which is Michelle Latimer's new series on CBC, and just, lots of great content. What else? I guess, and of course, where we're going to take the Black Screen Office, and the enthusiasm we're getting for it right now from the industry is really exciting. I mean, I've been working at this for about 10 years, and, for a long time, people, constantly would tell us, people just don't want to see diversity on screen. Canadians are not interested in this content, et cetera, et cetera. And I think by the numbers, by what we purely watch on unfortunately on American television all the time, like, that's not true. Right. Canadians love to watch diverse stories. Like, it's just not true. Canadians love to watch Black stories. Like, doesn't matter what your background is. But there's these myths, and so these conversations around changing who the gatekeepers are, having more voices at the table to really kind of question what the status quo is, and wonder, like, does it really need to be this way, or are assumptions being made that have kind of created the structures we have that have kept a lot of voices out? And so I think there's more people are taking listen to this, and some real changes are happening on all levels, not just, in front of the camera, but behind the camera and with the gatekeepers as well. And I'm just hoping that we can sustain that and really have a media that reflects everyone, all Canadians, and everyone who watches.
I 100% agree, Maya. And one of the great things about, I think, what all the gatekeepers have been shaken about is that they need to make sure they have their analytics in order. what are their numbers? Who are they tracking? And with that, who is applying? Who's applying? What are the numbers of people who are applying? What is their ethnicity? What is their race? And then being able to translate that so that we can actually have gender parity, we can have sexual parity, we can have racial parity. It's just so much more than, what is coming in. It's also about tracking that as well. So I totally agree. Stephen, I'll go to you. In our last 15 minutes, folks, I just want to remind folks we're going to end around 5:10. So we're welcome to keep talking.
I'll be quick. I agree with everybody's, I'm excited to see more inclusiveness and diversity and focus on different voices that haven't been generally heard properly or loudly until, and I feel like they're starting to be now, and there's a lot more work to do. I feel like we're always going to support that. We have since the beginning, and that's really, those are the projects we make. We work with a lot of first-time directors, a lot of first-time filmmakers. We support gender parity. It's really in our DNA. It was founded by Brenda and Aaron, and it's upheld by our teams that we've hired. We have gender parity at our executive level. We have great diversity. We have a lot more work to do even in that situation. We need to be better always. And so and in every decision that we make in terms of crewing up, I said this earlier, the length of your CV or of your is not directly proportionate as to whether or not you're the right person for the job or not. You could be a brand new person, but with the right voice to speak and to provide your point of view to the world, and that is what we support. And so I'm encouraged to see new offices being created to support this. I'm encouraged to see that gatekeepers, especially the old guard, I'm not young, but I'm not old. And so the old guard leaving and making room for today's voices, because that's very important. And I agree with you, Maya. I feel like the old days of the black box that's put into one person on someone's block to see to test who's watching TV is like, it's long gone. It's not with the internet the way it is and social the way it is. We have the tools to really understand who our marketplace is, or what our marketplace is, and who's watching. And I feel like that most companies haven't really started tapping into those data points in a way that's meaningful to start realizing that the voices that need to be heard and need to be showcased are actually not on screen at this time. So I said I'd be brief. That wasn't that brief, but okay.
Lulu, I'm going to throw it to you, but the question that actually somebody asked in our question box actually is very similar to this, so I'm going to add that in as well. Somebody asked if you ran into any challenges when you were accessing funding, as we did mention before, and how did you overcome that? And then also, when you received your funding, did you have any close calls that you needed to make that required a third-party audit or reviews that needed to be completed on time?
I feel like that would be, I wish my producer, Ali, was here, because I feel like once we got the funding, I was like, okay, now, like, I'm not gonna look or think or touch the finance part. Like, you deal with it. I'm gonna focus on like the creative part, because but I think the biggest challenge, especially I think maybe before, I was a bit naive on like, I can just make this by myself, like I'll just do whatever I need to do. And like, the entire time I was making this film, except for like maybe the last year or two, I was working full time at like an ad agency. So I was supporting myself and then trying to just do whatever I could to make the film happen. And honestly, if I didn't have a full-time job, I don't know how I could have made this film, because like how, yeah, I still wonder how people, you know, are able to get the development money to keep going. And like, I feel like as a director or like filmmaker, you just have to try and do other things to like keep things going, and it's a lot to try and get something off the ground. So yeah, I guess the challenge was like trying to get the money to begin with, and once we got that, my producer Ali pretty much dealt with a lot of that. But what was great in that, you know, like the talent to watch was like one drawdown. So I think that was very different than what you get with other maybe bigger grants, or even with like broadcasters. I think that was my first time working with a broadcaster, and learning about that whole dynamic as well.
Thanks for sharing. You know, we're in our last 10 minutes together and 5 minutes left of the town hall. So I do want to honor what I said at the top and make space for somebody who may want to take the mic. If you do, feel free to put your, you know, little hand or chat in, say your name. That way we can get you on. Oh, all right. We do have one person who has their hand raised. If Julia, if you can get them to speak. Hi.
Hello.
Hey.
How's it going? My name is Christopher Bautista. I just want to say thank you, first of all, for the opportunity to speak, but also to all the amazing attendants on the webinar today. Everyone from Stephen and what you just said that resonated with me about providing a space for not only, you know, someone with a great resume, but also people that come from a very specific and unique perspective. And over to Maya and the work that you're doing, you know, with the Black Screen Office, with Jennifer and Lulu, to hear your story and how you went from, you know, working at an ad agency to you know, making your dreams into reality and being able to create a film. Thank you all for, you know, for sharing your stories. I asked the question, Lulu, about, you know, making the transition from once you did receive your funding and what challenges that you saw. And, you know, it's funny, as someone that works as both actor, creative, as well as I work with a company called FOFS. And what we do, we provide audits and review engagements for people that receive funding, because I know as a creative myself, when it comes to like the tax part of it, I don't want to have anything to do with that, right? There's someone that can figure that out so much better than me. So I think my question was, did you run, or Ali run into any kind of challenges in that process of wrapping up those funding engagements? And if you did, what was the way that you overcame it?
I think we're still in the process of getting all of our deliverables sorted out, and I know we're still sorting out our tax credits, et cetera, just because we literally just finished right before our Hot Docs premiere. So we were lucky in that we had Nina Beveridge do like our business affairs, and she was able to work on the film and help us figure out like a lot of the producer questions that Ali and maybe I had, and how to work with our broadcaster. But as for that, all of that, I'm like, I don't know. I've been pretty much like, I know that we have Nina and Ali, and they work together on it, and we have a really great bookkeeper and accountant to deal with all that stuff with them too. So I'm sorry that I can't be much help, since I feel like they were very good at, you know, shielding me from having to worry
numbers.
about all of that stuff, which I think is awesome. As a director, obviously I realize I should know these things, but at the same time, it's great to just be able to focus on, you know, making the film that I want to make, kind of thing.
Thank you.
Amazing, amazing.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thanks,
for that
Christopher.
answer, and I've reached out to you on LinkedIn, and hopefully I can hear more about what you're creating in the future, and possibly, you know, you never know, Follow Focus may be able to help you all out with that if you're still wrapping those things up. So hope to talk to you soon.
Cool, thank you.
Yep.
We love a LinkedIn connection. So within our last 5 minutes with each other, I just want to focus on one question and actually pose this to all of the panelists available today. What grants or programs are available for emerging QT by POC filmmakers with little to show? So they have little on their resume, as Stephen would say. For example, this person, they have a lot of documentary experience and they're writing their first narrative short, but they find it hard to get funding, even with the right mentors on board. So are there any programs that you folks know and would recommend? Maya, I'll start with you because I know your background.
I don't know, Lulu might be able to speak more to whether Inside Out still has funding for emerging filmmakers. I know they've had in the past that peers of mine have made films there, but I'm not sure if those programs are still running. But in terms of being emerging and trying to find Arts Council funding, which is where a lot of people go to support their work, I know there's this really hard kind of conundrum that you find yourself in. You haven't, like, you've been working in film, but you don't have the criteria to be eligible to even apply to arts councils. And you want to make that film with funding. Obviously, you don't want to fund it all yourself, but that's the film that would actually make you eligible to get into the arts council world. And it's like this thing I see time and time again. And I guess what my suggestion is, what they're looking for is that you've made something totally independently that's kind of in the realm of what you're trying to do, and you've screened it publicly. So what I recommend is keep writing that narrative short, and maybe that budget is 40, 50, 60,000, and you know, you need Arts Council support or some other funds to help you out with that, and then work on something that is smaller in scale that you can kind of do with some friends of yours, put together very quickly, and then apply to local film festivals and film festivals that you think would be looking for this type of content. And then that work and that showing that at festivals, even if they're online festivals, will make you eligible for Arts Council funding. So it's kind of like, make some work, make something that's a little bit like smaller in scope, that you can finance yourself, show that, and then that'll unlock the doors to Arts Council funding. So I've seen people do that with support from LIFT or other filmmaker resource centers, where they can get equipment for free or at a low cost, and they can kind of make these smaller projects and then go out and apply for a Toronto Arts Council, Ontario Arts Council, or Canada Council for their larger projects. So that's my advice. But I know it's really hard. I myself, you know, financed my first independent work outside of school, and it took me a long time to pay it off. So I don't recommend people do that. Yeah.
Thank you for all those resources, Maya. I actually have just been told that there is one person that would like to actually take the mic. And so I'll actually let them ask their question, because Maya so diligently answered that last one, and then we'll get to the closing messages. So I believe it's from Shama Gupta. Take the mic. Welcome.
Sorry, I was having trouble unmuting myself. My question was for Sorab, and sorry to have mispronounced your name earlier. So going back to your comment about, you know, making sure that the artists you're representing is a good fit for the production. And my question, I guess, is around whether that model should continue to exist. Like, I'm sure that's the business practice now. That's what the majority of productions are doing. But is it not our responsibility to make sure that productions accommodate fit if you are the talent that best fits that production?
For sure. I thank you for speaking. I saw your question in the chat, and I wasn't quite clear on how you're asking, so I just wanted a little more clarity from you. And I appreciate you speaking. I guess what I was trying to get at was the balance between, in a larger sense, between art and the business elements of our industry, because it is a business, not just for the people at the top making money, but also for everyone else, for myself, for everyone on this panel, for all the filmmakers watching it. You know, the idea is that we are able to make a living doing that. And certainly part of my job is making sure that my clients are earning a living and able to kind of fulfill their career goals. So when I say fit, I think what I was referring more to was in the same way that if you are a comedy writer, for example, I'm not putting you up for 1 hour dramatic shows because that's not the right fit. You might have the ability, you might, you know, maybe the credits are there, but if that isn't the right fit for you, if you feel, hey, I don't want to do that kind of show, that might not be the right fit. So and it's very hard to kind of get into a specific conversation about that without, you know, knowing specific details or having, you know, specific details to talk about. So I was more referring to it in kind of a more general sense. I agree with you that yes, in a larger sense, that we should be changing the industry to fit sort of the reality, the new reality. And I think some of the stuff that Stephen was talking about, you know, how hours are changing and how, you know, the 12-hour set day, which is grueling for anyone, regardless of whether you have health issues or not. There's a reason I switched to working in an office and working in an agency versus production is, you know, it's exhausting and it's grueling. A 60-hour work week is exhausting, and that's like a standard work week in our industry. So I think, you know, part of this whole refocus that COVID has done is forcing us to ask some of these more fundamental questions about how our industry operates and it's allowing us to kind of now, you know, stepping aside from the COVID question of it all, but also then being able to have these more granular questions about, well, are we being inclusive in allowing everyone, you know, access and the ability to work in? But that's kind of what I was referring to. Does that answer your question, Shama?
Yeah, I misunderstood, I guess, your definition of fit there.
No, and I appreciate you getting more clarity because I can understand where people might not be clear on that. So I do appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. We are over time, folks, but well worth it. The last thing that I will ask everybody, just quickly, how can people get in contact with you folks? Social media handles, work that we should look forward to. So Rob, I'll start with you.
I don't really do much of my work on social media. Best reach out to me through the agency, thecharacters.com. Has my contact info. Best way is email, and you can kind of find my info there. And you know, that's the best way. Yeah.
Maya?
Yeah, I'm not the best on social media. So I would say the best is to reach me through my production company, Third Culture Media. So you can get me at info@thirdculturemedia.com. Or you could find me through Twitter, I guess, at Maya Anik or at Third Culture Film as well.
Perfect. Lulu?
My email is theluluway@gmail.com. And that's the best way to get a hold of me.
Awesome.
And you can see my film in the fall. It's going to be at some festivals, online festivals. And then we have some exciting announcements. And at some point, it will be on CBC POV as well.
Look at that. Stephen?
I keep my social media for family and
I
close
love
friends,
that.
so it's way easier because I get like 500 emails a day. So, but my Twitter account is not. It's a work one, so it's at Stephen A. Tebow, and I'm happy to chat there, and of course LinkedIn. That's also a big one.
We love LinkedIn. Last but
Yeah.
not least, Jesse?
Yeah, sorry, I had to turn my camera off because my connection was really struggling. I will add myself to the list of folks here who don't really use social media that much, but you can find CFMDC on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, CFMDC Film for Facebook and Instagram, and CFMDC for Twitter. And if anyone wants to contact me directly, my email is on our website, cfmdc.org. Yeah.
I'm loving the anti-social media wave that we're all on. It makes me very happy because I personally only use Twitter. I don't like anything else. So y'all can find me at Sister Samah on Twitter. And of course, the festival, please tag us at Future Film Show on all the socials and use the hashtag FOFS, hashtag FOFS Industry, and of course, hashtag FOFS20. We're only a few days away from the final day of the Future Film Showcase presented by CBC GEM. And a huge thank you for today's event presented by, in partnership with Faye Pictures and CMPA. The biggest shout out to the FOFS team working behind the scenes for all of their hard work throughout the festival as well. And of course, all of you joining us today for the discussion. Signing out here, everyone be blessed, be safe, and enjoy the rest of Virgo season. Thank you for coming, y'all.